How would you like to be able to heal your gut and regain your energy and vitality? Bryan Hardy will tell us how. He is the founder of Holistic Nutrition and a life coach for men. And whilst he's a life coach for men, I'm sure a lot of the tips he'll be sharing will be great for women too, as well, to clear brain fog. Because once you heal your gut, you can clear a lot of the problems that could potentially impact your overall health and energy. And that's why I'm so excited to have Bryan. So, Bryan, tell us, how can entrepreneurs and how can men heal their gut and regain energy? Heal Podcast with Lily Patrascu shares longevity and anti-aging techniques to stay young forever, increase energy, overcome addiction, and live your longest, best life ever. Shared by world's most innovative, alternative, and traditional health thought leaders, healers, and doctors. Discover quantum healing strategies to heal your mind, body, and soul.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me, Lily. It's great to connect, and I'm excited to chat and to share with your audience. To answer that question, if it's all right with you, I think it would be useful to rewind a little bit as to, who am I and why do I do this and why am I talking about these things, right? Why am I bringing up ideas like the gut and digestion and relating that to energy and then applying that to our lives as entrepreneurs? So if we could wind the clock back a little bit, I had the fortune, at the time it felt like misfortune. It felt like the most painful, challenging experience of my life at that point. But when I was 18, my appendix ruptured and was misdiagnosed. So that sent me into, I was very close to septic shock or death by the time the second hospital realized what was going on. I had been very, very sick for about a week, but just didn't know what was happening. And so the second hospital I went to did emergency surgery, and they said, prepare for the worst. Hopefully it's just your appendix, but it could be a lot more. Luckily, it was just the appendix. And so I woke up from that and spent the next 11 days in the hospital. And so I went from healthy, happy, vibrant 18-year-old university student to depleted and depressed and fatigued, and just had years of complications because of the antibiotics and the scar tissue and the things that came out of that surgery. And so medicine kept me alive. They saved my life, and I'm eternally grateful for that fact. But the doctors, the nurses, no one could teach me why this happened, and no one could teach me how to be well, how to live with vitality, how to take care of myself, how to really set myself up to not have future health issues. Right. And that's so true for so many of us, is that it takes a crisis of some sort, whether it's mental health, physical health, digestive health. We get hit with some kind of event that forces us to slow down and to pay attention to, okay, how am I eating? Am I exercising? Am I dealing with stress effectively? Why do I feel so stressed? Why do I feel so anxious? Why do I feel so not myself? And it's only, for me, it was only because I had that experience at a relatively young age that I then became obsessed with figuring out, why did this happen? How could I have prevented this from happening? And how am I going to rebuild myself from this point? Because I was, coming from a background of being very active, very, quite happy, content young man, driven, energetic, ambitious. And then I spent the next, say, 3 years, most of my early 20s, dealing with fatigue, dealing with brain fog, dealing with all kinds of chronic digestive issues, gas, bloating, constipation, you name it. And it made life really crappy. It made life really hard, made it hard to function. And so that whole process came to teach me that not only had I been the one creating those conditions for myself by what I was eating and how I was living and toxifying my system, but that there's so much that we can do through food, through nutrition, through supplementation, through natural lifestyle principles that are going to either fix the issues we might have if we are currently having issues that we're aware of, or are just going to let us to show up with the most energy and the most vibrancy and endurance, which if you're an entrepreneur, you need these things, right? You need energy, you need focus, you need your brain to work. And if your gut is off and your mood and your energy are failing you, or they're not what they used to be, then it's important to dig deeper.
Thank you. So tell us, what's the blueprint for someone to heal their gut and regain energy? And also, what are the typical causes of ending up in a situation where you need to heal your gut?
Yeah. So again, great question. Um, there's a framework that we learn. Anyone who's a naturopathic doctor or functional medicine practitioner or nutritionist typically learns this framework, which is the 4 R's, the 4 R's framework. And this is helpful for anybody, whether you have debilitating issues or you're just like, you don't quite feel your best and you need a bit of a reset. And so those 4 R's are to remove, replace, reinoculate, and then regenerate. And this is specifically referring to your digestive function, right? And so remove means get rid of the inflammatory foods. What are you eating right now that your body is not able to digest? For most people, dairy and gluten fall into that category. Many people have sensitivities to those foods or allergies to those foods. They just don't tolerate those things well. And how you would even know, do I have a gut issue? Is my gut okay? I'm not sure. I don't pay attention to my gut, right? These are things that people don't really look at until there's a real something, screaming at them. And so a few things for someone to self-identify if digestion is even a problem for them in the first place. I think that'd probably be useful to know. So the questions to ask there are, do I have easy and complete bowel movements every day? Right? If you're going more than a day without having a number two, without using the washroom, that's an issue. That's a serious issue. The other part, do I have bloating, gas, fatigue after I eat? Right? Do I feel worse after I eat? Do I feel like I'm constantly bloated and I'm constantly gassy? If so, that's an issue, right? Those things aren't normal. Growing up, I was constipated and gassy my whole life, and I thought that was normal, right? Nobody told me otherwise. So I figured, okay, I guess everybody's like this. I didn't realize that was not supposed to be the case. And so even skin issues, right? Skin issues, rashes, acne, a lot of these all come back to the gut. And so those are a few things to look for in terms of like, how much of an issue is this for me? Is this something I need to be paying attention to? Well, if you don't have the mood, the energy, the skin health, and the even immunity, if you're always getting sick, right? If you catch colds and fevers all the time or flus all the time, every time, that season sort of comes around in the winter, those can all be tied back to the gut. And so we need to get in there. We need to remove the crap that is causing your issues, the foods you're not digesting, the toxins you're around, whether you're putting on, personal care products that are loaded with chemicals, or you're breathing cleaners that are really harsh and they're causing an additional toxic burden to your system. And you got to get that stuff out. You have to detox your house, your health, and by doing so, your body and your actual physical home, right? Because a lot of people have like air fresheners and perfumes and all these different artificial things that are really not helping them. After that, you replace that stuff, right? So get the inflammatory stuff out, start bringing in anti-inflammatory foods. And you can find what those are generally online very easily. Things like fish and nuts and seeds and lean proteins and fruits and vegetables, fresh things, living things, healthy fats like olive oil or coconut oil, avocados. All these things are typically on the anti-inflammatory side of the picture. Once you've got that, you might need to add in things like enzymes or things to specifically help with digestion. Many people notice that they feel heavy or they feel tired after eating, but if they add in some digestive enzymes, that goes away, right? As well as things like bloating and gas, that all goes away, which is, it's telling you that your body's not adequately producing what it's supposed to be producing, right? From there, we get into the reinoculation phase, which is all of the probiotics, prebiotics, all the things that people are pretty familiar with in terms of what are the beneficial bacteria you need in your gut, in your mouth, in your system to allow you to digest and break down what you're consuming. And then the regenerate phase is how do we heal up and seal that lining, that very thin lining of the digestive tract, which most people have that compromised or damaged in some way. which we would call leaky gut, right? Which is a pretty common term as well. Or gut hyperpermeability, intestinal hyperpermeability is the medical term for that. In case your doctor says leaky gut doesn't exist. And I've heard many doctors say that, which is nonsense because it's been very well studied. So that's like the big picture, right? That's the big picture view. But really it comes down to determining what's going on with the individual, right? And that's a combination of a really thorough intake process and functional testing. So doing specific tests to see what's going on. And then from there, we can tailor that framework I just went through to meet the individual's needs, right? To get them from where they are to where they want to get to, and to restore that energy and restore that digestion. And that process can take a little while. It can take, a couple of months to do, but if you do it well, then it doesn't have to be 6 months, 12 months and or beyond, right? I talk to a lot of people. Many clients come to me and they say, I've tried everything, right? I've tried this diet, this cleanse, that detox, but they never stick with something, right? And they didn't have something that was personalized to them. And so because of that, they never actually get to where they want to get to.
Thank you. For someone who wants to live longer and to have a healthy life and to be rejuvenated and to feel revitalized, what are the top causes of feeling like slow and sluggish and not having energy? I mean, you said a few things already, but tell us, what would you say are the main causes that that result in having a person feel sort of like, slow and sluggish and not having energy to do the most basic activities?
Yeah. I'll illustrate this with an example because I think it's probably easier to connect with for folks, easier to understand, is that one of my favorite clients I've worked with in the past, he came to me and he was your typical kind of hard charging corporate, climbing, growth oriented. He was into personal development. He was doing many things. He was doing very well in his career. But he was dependent on caffeine to get through the day, which is a red flag, right? If you can't function without caffeine, that's an issue, right? Your body is not like designed to need stimulants in order to function. So many people, you start there, right? If you absolutely need your coffee 2 or 3 or 4 a day to get through the day, that's an issue. And he was in that space, right? He would have one in the day, probably 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and then he'd be unwinding in the evening with alcohol, right? So there's this really common pattern of stimulating with coffee, tea, whatever energy drinks during the day, and then unwinding with wine or whatever your preferred choice of liquor is in the evening, and then waking up and feeling not refreshed at all, feeling like you didn't get enough sleep or you didn't get enough quality sleep, and then oftentimes not drinking water during the day, so you're dehydrated. And then when it comes to food, it's like people are reaching for convenience rather than real food, right? And so this individual was doing that. He would even fast for a lot of the day, which many people think, oh, fasting is healthy. I'll just fast. I just won't eat anything. And then he'd eat a giant amount of food, many times takeout in the evening, and then wash that down with a glass or 2 of wine. So it wasn't a surprise to me that his gut was inflamed. His energy was low. He had bags under his eyes. His skin was dull. His mood wasn't the best, and he didn't have the kind of confidence and enthusiasm and presence that he wanted to have, both for his professional pursuits, right? Because how you show up in a meeting, how you show up to your boss, your colleagues, energetically has an impact, right? If somebody shows up bright and they look healthy and vibrant and really, awake and alert, I'm going to feel better about that person. I'm going to trust that person more. Right? If they're taking care of themselves, they can probably handle whatever we have to do in the office, right? So that was huge. And it was, again, taking this 4 R's framework, personalizing it to him in that case, introducing more real food, more consistent eating, more water, less stimulation. And in a matter of like 12 weeks, he went from, as I described before, really struggling to not needing stimulants basically at all, waking up with more energy, even though he was still sleeping maybe 6 hours a night, which I don't recommend for long term for most people. So he could have still used more sleep, but he was also working like 60 hours a week, like legit 60 hours a week. And that was the season he was in. He was willing to make that trade-off. So we had to make it fit for his lifestyle. He was working out maybe 10 minutes a day, 3 to 4 times a week. So nothing super intense, but a focused 10 minutes full body workout spread throughout the week. And then he had the personalized supplementation that I developed for him, and just strategies to better deal with stress than to be overstimulating and then sedating in the evening. And so that's that example that I just described, which is a real life example, is so common, right? And for people listening to this, you can probably identify with some or all of those factors. And so if that's you and you feel kind of flat, you feel like your energy, your brain function is not right, is not quite there, then you need to look at food, you need to look at sleep, you need to look at mental emotional stress, and you need to look at toxicity, right? Those are the main things that are going to be affecting most people.
Thank you. Give us some examples of fermented enzymes that people could eat in order to improve their digestion system.
Yeah, great question. And that's something, whenever possible, I love for people to be able to use food as a primary tool for addressing what they have going on. Sometimes it's not quite enough and you need supplementation, but there's a lot you can do with food. And so in that case, enzyme-rich foods, fermented foods, we're talking things like kimchi, like sauerkraut, pickles, done in a more natural fermented way. We're talking living foods, right? So like lettuce that just came out of the garden, right? Fruits and vegetables that are fresh. Or for most people, the more practical thing is sprouts, right? So like broccoli sprouts or alfalfa sprouts or mung bean sprouts. These are all things you can do at home in your kitchen in a little glass jar for like pennies a day that produce live, living, enzymatically rich food, right? Super, super nutritious food, better than anything you can buy in a store in most cases. And it costs virtually nothing except maybe a couple of minutes a day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tell us some superfoods or some revitalizing foods that we should be eating so that we are energized throughout the day.
Yeah. So for energy stability, you really want to make sure you're getting a nice balance from proteins, fats, carbohydrates, right? For most people, you're going to want some sort of a more balanced approach in that respect. And so not skipping meals, super important. If you're going to have, like a smoothie for breakfast, I like smoothies. I'm putting all kinds of organic berries into that, right? You could put things like algae, like spirulina. You could put things like, different seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds, whatever it might be. Greens powders can also be really convenient for people. And making sure you're including protein powder in there. If you're making smoothies and you're not putting protein powder in, then you're missing out on what's an essential nutrient, right? That's not going to keep you full for very long, and it's not going to give you stable energy for very long. So those are the things that I would reach towards. And again, keep it simple, right? Have in your mind an idea of, okay, where am I getting my protein? Let's say I'm going to have eggs, right? I'm going to have 3 or 4 eggs. Okay, protein check. Am I getting anything fresh, right? Lettuce, some cut up vegetables, celery, carrots, apples, whatever it is, something fresh, something living. Healthy fat, right? Am I using extra virgin olive oil in my salad dressing or in my cooking? Or am I using hydrogenated canola oil, something really processed and really inflammatory? That's important as well. And so it's the other piece here, which often gets overlooked, is eating enough, right? So I talked about skipping meals. Many people, they just don't eat enough food. They're in this diet idea of starving themselves. So they're not eating enough food to actually feel satisfied and to give their body the adequate fuel that it needs to get through the day, right? Which is why they then reach for the next, cup of coffee or a donut or a pastry or some little quick thing for a hit of energy that's going to give you a spike. You're going to feel good for maybe an hour, probably less, and then you're going to be back down and looking for the next thing. And so it's eat actual meals, right? Don't go skipping your meals unnecessarily, especially if you're already stressed and you're already working a very busy lifestyle. Skipping meals is probably the last thing you need to do. And then make sure that you're attending to your protein needs and then mixing that in with live things, fibrous things, and some healthy fats. And that's going to be, for most people, that's going to get them probably 80% of the way there.
Thank you. In terms of frying foods, what do you recommend to use as a frying oil? Or do you recommend that people skip frying stuff altogether? And if yes, what should they use instead?
Yeah. So when you're saying frying, you mean like pan frying, like cooking in a pan?
Yes, like
Okay.
frying, I don't know, frying chicken or frying, I don't know, mushrooms or things like that.
Yeah. So like pan frying as opposed to deep frying, right? Where you have like breaded things that are going down into the oil like they do in the restaurant or at a fast food place. That can be avoided entirely. Save that for like your once a month treat or something. Um, but at home, as long as the key here is to not go above medium heat, right? So whatever your medium heat is on your stove top, on your burners, or whatever you're using, don't go above medium, right? You don't need to. And if you do, you're going to burn things, you're going to damage the oils you're using, and it's not going to be good. So keep it at medium. That's important. And then from there, you can pick from whatever you want. I like olive oil as a go-to. It tends to be protected from damage, especially extra virgin, organic, high quality olive oil, which will tend to have a little bit of like a pepperiness, a little bit of a bite to it if you just taste it on its own. Um, the greenish color, that greeny, yellowy color in there is indicative of protective chemicals from the plant that are going to make that a safer thing to cook with, right? It's not going to get damaged as much because there's antioxidants in the oil itself. Other things that you could use would be avocado oil, coconut oil. Those are some common ones. If you want to use animal-based fats, then something like ghee, which is clarified butter, would probably be the best option in that respect, because butter itself will burn at even around medium heat. Butter can burn pretty easily. So you either use those ones that are safe for cooking, or you cook with more dry heat methods, baking, steaming, and then add your fat afterwards, right? So if I'm going to have like steamed broccoli and I might want to put butter on that when it's done, butter, salt, whatever spices, I'm just going to steam it and then I'm going to put the fat on when it's done. And that way the fat is not being exposed to those same super high temperatures, which can lead to damaging those oils, and that can lead to inflammatory effects in us once we eat those things.
Thank you. Tell us some of your case studies of entrepreneurs you've worked with where you've helped them to change their lifestyle through healing their gut and what impact that had on their energy, vitality, and impact at work.
Yeah. So I always think back to my man, JP, who was amazing. He was a real trooper. He came to me with an autoimmune condition, a very painful autoimmune condition, and he was running a printing company, small scale printing company in Toronto. That was all on him, basically. And he had been very unwell for quite some time. At that point, when we first met, he couldn't exercise because he would be in too much pain. He was dependent on not just like, over the counter, like coffee, tea stimulants, but he also used pharmaceutical ADD medication in order to get through the day. And again, he was constantly bloated and constantly, in his words, addicted to sugar and to cheese of all things. And so he would be reaching for these things back and forth and stimulants and then things to wind down in the evening and just really having a hard time functioning. And when he would have a flare up of his condition, which was similar to like an arthritic condition, but an autoimmune based condition. And for anyone listening who has an autoimmune condition, that all typically comes back to the gut. The leaky gut that we talked about earlier is that one of the foundational pieces for any autoimmunity. So that was him when we started, right? We took him through the process, and I kid you not, within 12 weeks, he was able to exercise again. And he enjoyed it. So he was back swimming, he was doing yoga, he was biking, he was doing a little bit of strength training a few times a week because he had the energy to do that, right? He also, when he would have a flare up, if he ate something that he knew, was going to cause an issue, or it was like hidden into the food. So for him, gluten was a serious trigger. And so he accidentally had some when he was eating some Thai food. It was in the sauce. He didn't know. And Whereas previously he would have been like a day or two, basically in bed, just knocked out, trying to recover. Now he could bounce back in a couple hours, right? So this was a huge difference. And imagine what he could do with that time. Right now, he could be working in his business. He could be delivering for clients and customers. He could be finding new clients and customers. He was actually functional, not just for his business, but also for his wife, right? Who was there, like with her husband, who was struggling and trying to pick up the slack, but there's only so much you can do, right? So it's like they both, and she did the diet part with him, which was amazing, right? So they both had this renewed sense of energy, and the energy, the mental clarity, the mood support that he got from that. I mean, you can only imagine what he was able to do in terms of redirecting that and reinvesting that into his business. And that's just one example. And I see it time and time again that it gives you, although it might feel like a sacrifice at the beginning, like I'm going to give up these foods. I'm going to spend time shopping and cooking and prepping my meals. I'm going to learn about how these things work. It's an investment. I'm not going to lie. It's an investment on the front end, but the benefits you get and how much more energy, which translates to time and effectiveness if you're a business owner, how much more you receive when you're operating from a place of vitality and energy and endurance, and resilience. I mean, the difference is massive, absolutely massive. And if you were to look at that over the course of a year or 10 years in terms of improved effectiveness and improved efficiency and productivity for your work, I mean, it's massive. It's massive what that's worth for somebody.
Thank you. How can entrepreneurs heal their gut so they can stop having parasites that may have an impact in their vitality or migraines or other conditions that may occur as a result of parasites? How can people remove parasites from their system?
Yeah. So the first thing is to recognize that most parasites, they can only exist in an unhealthy environment, right? They're like opportunistic. And some parasites, quote unquote parasites, are completely natural and normal, right? And it's funny because you see kids who are raised on farms around livestock, around dogs, around cats, around all kinds of animals, which they're all going to have parasites. It's inevitable to some degree. Those kids tend to have the best immune systems and the best health outcomes over time. So it's not like we want to be sterile. We don't want to be squeaky clean and free of all bacteria or pathogens, because we're not designed for that, right? We're designed to have a certain amount of synergistic organisms that live within us that actually make us healthier. But if you've done some kind of assessment, right, either through like a questionnaire or an intake process, or you've actually done testing, like stool testing, to see, is there anything showing up that's a problem? If you've identified that to be the case, then from there, as I spoke about that 4R framework, the remove part of the puzzle, you would add in anti-parasitic herbs and medicines, mostly supplementation. You would add those in at the beginning of that four-step program or the 4R framework. And you would do that for 30, 45 to 60 days, typically. A very specific regimen of rotating different anti-parasitic compounds, things like berberine, things like wormwood, things like black walnut tinctures and so forth. There's many different things people can use, most of them completely natural. But you would want to include those things at the beginning of that process, and also strip away certain foods that are going to be more likely to contribute to a parasite, infection, which would be like any refined sugars, even things like raw fish, like sushi, raw fish, pork oftentimes can be a bit higher in terms of parasite potential. And just making sure that you're washing things very, very well, because even like, organic lettuce could have parasite eggs on it because of the stuff that's in the field. And so you want to make sure you're washing those things well. I like to do either a vinegar soak, so a couple tablespoons of vinegar in some water, put all of your fresh stuff in there for 10, 15 minutes, and then rinse it very well. Or you can even use ozone. You have a little home ozone machine and bubble ozone into there, and that's also going to disinfect or kill any potential stuff that you're taking in. But then
Thank
from
you.
there, it's not much of a different process. You just have to make sure you're including those antiparasitics, and that you're also paying more attention to basic sort of natural hygiene principles.
Thank you. For those people experiencing acid reflux as a result of poor eating, what should they do to heal their gut and heal their acid reflux?
Yeah, so again, you want to figure out why are they having that in the first place, right? If someone is dehydrated and is mineral depleted and is stressed as they eat, meaning they don't take any time to slow down, to take a few deep breaths, to actually be present with their food, and remove the screens, get away from their work, get away from anything stressful, stop eating in the car, right? Just doing that can restore more natural digestive function and can reduce things like acid reflux, which is typically actually low stomach acid. So people think, oh, I have this burning feeling in my throat, and if I take an antacid medication, it feels better. But what's commonly happening is that they're so stressed out and their digestion is so impaired that things, rather than being broken down naturally, are starting to ferment, and it's producing fermentation acids, which are then coming back up and causing that irritation. So the easiest way to try to determine which is the case for you is to take about a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in a large glass of water and to have that at the first sign of acid reflux. So if you've just eaten something, maybe you had something spicy or you had something, acidic like tomato sauce or something like that. Common foods that trigger this would be more on the acidic spectrum. But if you have that apple cider vinegar and you find that it provides relief, then you know that you don't have an excess acid problem. You actually have a deficiency. So you need to introduce things like, hydrochloric acid, which is basically stomach acid, which you can get as a supplement. You need to introduce enzymes, and you can introduce something as simple, like I said, as apple cider vinegar in water before or after a meal, and that's going to remedy, what's going on there and start to rebalance your internal system so that it's better able to digest whatever it is that you're eating.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find more information about you and your programs on healing your gut.
Yeah. So for anyone who wants to learn more, the best place to find me and where all my social stuff is linked up is just at my website, right? So revitalizedman.com is absolutely the sort of one-stop shop. You'll find a lot of good information there, and you can connect with me on your preferred platform. I'm pretty easy to find on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, etc. And so revitalizedman.com is the place. And then I put together, I know we talked previously, I put together a custom link for your listeners, right? So if they want to go to revitalizedman.com/Lily, Lily, there they'll find a couple freebies that I put together, just really actionable things that they can take and start to apply immediately to support the gut, to support their energy, to support them feeling their best. And those are just a couple of free gifts for them that they can find at that link.
Thank you. Follow me for more interviews with world's most innovative health changemakers to live your healthiest life ever.